Oh, beautiful. Good morning, everybody. So welcome everybody to our 2024 Forensic Mental Health Forum. And this is our first year where we've seen more people online than we have in person. So it's kind of a bit of an interesting experience for me. I teach online, so I'm used to people living out in the ether. But yeah, getting used to the forum in its hybrid format changing. So this is our 11th Forensic Mental Health Forum. So before we get started, I'd like to say welcome on behalf of the Queensland Forensic Mental Health Service and the School of Criminology and Criminal Justice at Griffith. I'd like to begin this forum by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land we stand on today, the Yuggera people. This forum is going out across Australia, therefore I'd like to acknowledge the people from all the lands across Australia. I'd like to pay my respects to the elders of these lands, the elders that are past and the elders that are present today. And I also hope that any of the material that we present in today's forum is sensitive to the hardships suffered by people across Australia. I'd also like to recognise the lived experience of people living with mental illness, problematic alcohol and other drug use, as well as those impacted by suicide, their families, carers and support people. We respect and value their opinions, their input into service delivery and into change. So as I mentioned before, this is our 11th forum, and our aim in delivering these forums is not only a networking opportunity, but it's also an opportunity for us to provide professional development across anyone that's directly or indirectly related with people who are in the forensic mental health population. So we've got attendees today out there in the ether as well as in here from Queensland Police Service, Corrective Services, Youth Justice. We've got academia, we've got private practice, we've got education, and students as well. So welcome to our students. So in this forum, we deliver. We get support in delivering this financially from the programs that we teach. So part of the collaborative agreement we have between Queensland Forensic Mental Health and the School of Criminology is the delivery of the Graduate Certificate in Forensic Mental Health and the Masters in Forensic Mental Health. So those programs were started with the aim of developing the field, so improving the service that we provide to population forensic mental health and the delivery service within those. So some housekeeping matters. In the case of an emergency or fire, do not come down to these doors. They're rooms, you'll be trapped. Go out the way you came in, out into the grassy area out there. The bathrooms are out and to your left and around the corner. And I ask people if they could please just put their phones on silent. I know you have work to do and meetings to attend, so keep it on silent, keep it on vibrate, and I hope that you enjoy the day. So today our theme is forensic mental health in a digital age, innovation and risk. So we've seen the burgeoning field of technology and digital resources in the community. And now we're a bit slower off the mark in forensics. So we're a little bit more risk averse. We're dealing with a few more layers of challenges that we have to get through to implement technology into the services that we do. And so today we're going to take you through some of the risk, some of the benefits and some of the innovation that is there potentially. And I hope that as I take you through today, we're going to look at technology used in offending, technology used in the assessment, monitoring, management and treatment of people within the forensic mental health population. So our first speaker today, I'll get Andrew to come up and I'll get his PowerPoint presentation ready and then introduce him. Welcome, Andrew. Okay. So we're going to start with a presentation from Dr. Andrew Charles, who is a lecturer in the School of Criminology and Criminal Justice at Griffith University. He specialises in the intersection of emerging technologies and crime. His research examines how digital platforms and environments, ranging from the dark web and encrypted messaging applications to social media and alternative tech, how they facilitate cybercrime and shape online illicit markets. Andrew's work encompasses mixed methods such as big data text analysis of crime communities and qualitative methods such as interviews with cybercrime offenders and extracting conversations in cybercrime forums. He also explores broader issues in digital cultures, having written for outlets like The Conversation and The Interpreter on social media trends. So today, Dr. Charles will be presenting on advancements in technology and offending. So what's new? Thank you, Andrew.
Hi everyone. Thanks for having me. So full disclosure from the introduction, I don't do any work in the space of forensic mental health specifically, but I think the from talking to Elke about what the purpose of today was, the project aim was to scare people with spooky cybercrime stuff. So I think that hopefully I can manage to do that. So yeah, I'm a lecturer in the School of Criminology, so it's great to see these events that bring together our school at Griffith along with some of our industry partners for things. So that's really awesome to see. So I thought just to get on some shared language to start off with. I think sometimes what we tend to do in the space of technology and offending or in cybercrime is we tend to lump all of these completely different crimes into this one broad category of cybercrime. It's not super helpful. I think a better way of thinking about some of these problems is to think about things as either a cyber-dependent crime or a cyber-enabled crime. A cyber-dependent crime, that's when we're talking about some of the more traditional cybercrime, cybersecurity problems that you might be familiar with. These are essentially those crimes that will rely on or are entirely dependent on digital technologies, things like hacking offences, ransomware offences, those sorts of things. Then on the other side of that, we can also think about a broad range of crimes that in some ways over the last few years have been amplified in scale or scope or the size of the crimes or however many victims can be targeted as a result of these crimes. They're typically what we call cyber-enabled crimes. So there's traditional crimes that have been amplified by technologies. So things like fraud, for example, has been around for centuries, but there's obviously some shifts taking place over the last 2 decades in particular that has meant that more victims can be targeted in financial fraud schemes. Same thing with problems like harassment, sexual violence. These are not new problems, but what we are seeing over the last few years is the role of technology in shaping some of these things. But I just thought I'd sort of provide a bit more of a frame for some of the weird and wacky illicit markets that are on the internet by sort of bringing up the point that there's been some recent shifts to actually just move away from terms like cybercrime altogether. And I think it provides a good frame for some of the other topics that I see on the program that that will be discussed today. So if we think about this term cybercrime, right, it has the cyber part and the crime part. One point is that actually we should probably be a little bit more ambitious and think beyond this really narrow view of just crimes. If we think about the range of emerging harms from digital technologies like surveillance and privacy implications, all the way down to how the resources for batteries in everyone's smartphones were mined in incredibly exploitive conditions. These aren't crimes necessarily, but there's these broader harms or justice problems that we have to reckon with over the coming years. And then the other part, sort of where most of my research focuses on, is trying to dispel with this broad term cyber to actually look specifically at what the technology is, what the problem with that technology is, and how we're seeing this connection between humans and technologies to facilitate these different crimes. And so what I'm going to mainly talk about today is the rise of what are called online illicit markets and communities. So essentially here what I'm talking about is all of the digital spaces that in some way provide a way for people to come together to exchange illicit goods, illicit services, knowledge about how to commit particular crimes. There's a range of ways now that people can come together to organize themselves in this way. I, in a lot of my research, focus on these things like online illicit markets and online communities in the context of technology and offending, because to me it's really interesting for two reasons. One, with the rise of online markets and communities, it lowers the barriers to participating in different forms of technology and offending, and I'll show a few examples. And it also increases the ability for opportunistic offenders that we see as well. So the potential pathways that people might take from seeing something on social media or a surface web environment, and how that might lead them into encrypted messaging applications or into the dark web. So let me start with the sexiest part of cybercrime for most people in terms of what the dark web is. So I think usually when people are thinking about the dark web, it sort of conjures up this image of this guy sitting in a dark lit room with all this computer code running. There have been like YouTube trends over the last few years where people are opening up a scary dark web mystery box that they've bought online. It's probably helpful just to clarify exactly what I'm talking about with the dark web. So it isn't as probably mysterious as usually what it appears to be. Really, when we're talking about the dark web, what I'm talking about is the range of websites and digital platforms that can really only be accessed with a specialized browser, usually called the Tor browser, but there's a few other ways that you can get access to it. In the dark web, there's something specific called crypto markets or dark web markets, and they are what's responsible for a significant portion of illegal activity on the dark web. Illicit drugs are by far the most prevalent sales on the dark web, but I'll show you a few things to show some of the other things that you can buy online in some of these markets. So if you've never seen a dark web crypto market, this is basically what it looks like. You'll see that it looks mostly like an eBay or an Amazon, where you've got these really neatly defined categories for the different things you can take a look at. If you look at the numbers here, it's probably a little bit small, but you can start to get a sense then of what I mean in terms of how illicit drug sales typically dominate some of these markets. And that's been the focus for most of my research over the last few years. So in this market in particular, there are 33,500 listings for illicit drugs, and overall in the market about 44,000 listings in this market. So again, you can see that illicit drug sales dominate a lot of these markets. So this is what a pretty typical dark web crypto market looks like. There's a few of them. Usually when it comes to policing some of these markets, you can take one down, but three pop up in its place to quickly replace this market demand for these sort of services. So let's say, purely hypothetically, of course, let's say we're looking to get some MDMA. You can click into some of the categories and you can look at some of the specific advertisements from different vendors. This lets you read things like the top one, the XTC, 100% high quality pills. We can make choices about whether we want it to come from the Netherlands, or if we want to stick it to an Australian context and just order from someone in Australia. Australia, as a side point for this, is really interesting when it comes to dark web crypto markets. We see a lot of the demand in the Australian dark web space for local suppliers. So I think sometimes we also think that because it's on the dark web, people are going to place non-stop orders from Netherlands, Belgium, from South American countries. A lot of the times in Australia, we're actually talking about people ordering from within Australia. The other the other thing with dark web crypto markets, some of you may be thinking, how the hell would you ever trust sending your money to some of these people? The reason why you might is because there are things like reviews for some of these markets. So they help take away some of that anxiety for people around whether or not to make a purchase through some of these markets. You can read through some of these like user reviews about how well people packaged an item, and so it successfully made its way through customs to you. It's all pretty interesting stuff, and again, it's just like an Amazon or an eBay. As I said, most of the demand on dark web crypto markets is definitely for illicit drugs, but that's really not to discount the range of other products and services that you can get through some of these spaces. So here I've got a few examples as well of some of the broader fraud and hacking services that people can buy in some of these markets. So this has Australian driver's license ID scams. This is for a remote administration tool to hack computers. The best hacking tools mega pack, which you can purchase. And this one that I try and avoid showing my students in the cybercrime class, best fake doctor's notes, which you can buy through some of these markets as well. So these are essentially like templates where they give you the doctor's note and you can like write in things as well. So the other thing I really wanted to touch on, just to link it back to what I was saying earlier about actually needing to pay attention to the technologies and what we're talking about, is that a lot of the time we're not just talking about these mysterious places in the dark web where people can purchase some of these products. In most cases, we actually see these different types of illicit markets stretched in different places across the internet, across social media, encrypted messaging applications, and in surface web illicit markets as well. One of my favorite quotes was from somebody who I interviewed for something a few years ago. He said, Aussies in general don't like too much technical jargon. They want it easy like a KFC drive-through, which sort of points to this. There's a bit of a security and convenience trade-off that people make when they're trying to navigate some of these markets, right? The dark web might be really safe, might be really anonymous. You can purchase with cryptocurrencies. All of the internet traffic is encrypted. But the problem with that is that it can be quite painful for people to actually navigate some of these markets. There's the security convenience sort of angle to this, but it's also about understanding the different types of demands for products as well. If we're talking about a group of younger people who might be doing a bulk purchase of MDMA for an upcoming festival, maybe the dark web is an appealing place. If we're talking about someone with like a substance use addiction problems, they're not going to be likely to make a purchase from these dark web markets and wait 3-4 weeks for methamphetamine to get delivered to their house, right? In those sorts of situations, we're much more likely to see people navigate some of these more open markets or navigate like offline street-based connections. And so the dark web point I bring up, also to bring up the fact that these social media and encrypted messaging applications are becoming quite a prevalent space for younger people to access and supply illicit drugs. Here in some research that I was involved in a few years ago, we had a survey out to about 200 people who indicated that they'd used a mobile phone app in some way to coordinate the supply of illicit drugs. And it was quite interesting to us to see the range of different apps that people are using. Some probably not so surprising to us. Snapchat was by far, when we did this research, the most common app that people would use. Not surprising if you think about some of the features that Snapchat has, right? It has ephemeral messaging, so you can send a message to someone and it disappears. So it gives people this illusion of anonymity and safety in some of their decisions here. The other cool in quotation marks thing that I've looked at in this rise of online illicit markets on the internet is also situations where people don't need to in any way access the dark web or use the dark web. So this this website that you see here is a screenshot of a website that anyone can access. It's on the surface web, which anyone can access with like a Google browser or whatever browser you use on your computer. This website is a really interesting one. This is a essentially a peer-to-peer cannabis network they advertise themselves as. And so people sign up for this website. It puts a little pin on a map, and the different colors indicate whether they've signed up to the website as a buyer or a seller of cannabis. And in many situations, as I found out through this research, also people advertising heroin and methamphetamine products as well, but using this platform as a cannabis market initially, and then transitioning to something like an encrypted messaging application to advertise some of the other products that they have. The other thing I wanted to highlight too, in thinking about this, the range of places that pop up across the dark web and the surface web, is the fact that we again can't just think that all of the illicit activity on the internet, all of the markets and communities that we see exist in really hidden spaces. This is again, this is a cybercrime forum that is again quite accessible through just the regular internet, and it's quite concerning some of the things that people are able to get access to and make requests for. So this this first one in particular, a database of Australian females. It has 1.05 million records where you can find phone numbers, emails, first names, last names, gender, birthday, location, hometown, relationship status, education last year, work, and they provide a little snippet of the data set just to let people know that it's actually like an authentic breach. And I think it's first of all a good reminder to avoid as much as you can handing over your data to social media giants that typically will not prioritize your data as safely as what you might think. This situation here, essentially what this person had done was just go through Facebook and scraped all of this information from people that had already provided this information to Facebook. So what we also see, the part that I find really interesting about cybercrime communities and cybercrime markets is how responsive they can be. It's not always this really clear market of, we've got a product, would you like to buy it? Sometimes what you might also get is requests like this. So the second one there, where the person's asking, or the person's making a request saying, I need access to a person's social media. And then the last one there is some tips on how to hack the WhatsApp of your friends by sending a single link. So again, just to make the point clear, I think sometimes we think that a lot of this is taking place in really shady dark web corners where no one can really see it, but there's also a range of cybercrime communities and markets that are quite accessible as well. Just to go through a few more examples with you, the next two markets, I also just thought I'd mention some of the weird and wacky situations that can lead to markets, and I'll come back to this as I wrap up at the end. Recently, with some colleagues, one at Griffith and one over at Western Australia, we've been looking at this thing called refund fraud. This is essentially the services that you're able to buy where you can purchase something from a retailer, they'll send you the product in the mail, and then you can do things like claim that the package never came delivered, claim that the package came damaged. So then you can have the bag or whatever that you ordered, as well as get your money back for some of this. And again, wherever we have these situations where people want to outsource some of this stuff, we see these markets pop up that respond to this consumer demand for this, right? So this is an example in Canada of a surface web market where someone was advertising how they can help you do some of these refunds. So they can do things like manipulate the shipping details in a retailer's system so that on their end it looks like they got the package back from you, so you get the refund into your bank account, but really you've got the nice new Gucci bag just for you. They do things like share guides to each other as well, so it's not always these transactional market, a buyer, a seller sort of situations. Sometimes it's just the distribution of guides. So this is the one and only refunding ebook that you'll ever need, and it lists about 8 different forms of social engineering that you can do with retailers to try and get free products. Just the other thing that I thought I'd mention with this, this thing down the bottom here, really interesting aspect of some of these markets and communities is some of them operate on the messaging application called Telegram, and there's some really interesting shifts that is taking place as people move over to some of these markets where they're doing things like integrating bots into their accounts. So in this situation, you can see me sort of start the request as part of the research that we did in this space, but it's super interesting. So you can now engage essentially not with another person in cybercrime markets, but with a person who's developed a bot. So you never actually need to speak to anybody. This is all like automated processes, and it's probably a bit of a concerning look into some of the future if we're thinking about how easy it is to for some people to code some of these bots. The other weird and wacky market that I thought I'd mention to people is in the context of health. So I'm sure everyone has enough PTSD from COVID, so you don't need me to go too much into that. There was a really interesting thing that came during COVID in terms of illicit markets, and that was the development of these like networks that helped each other create fake vaccine certificates. So in some research that came out last year, there was a, it's called an alt tech platform, if you're familiar at all with like Donald Trump's like Truth Social, like these free speech sort of platforms. It was on one of them, but there were essentially these 5 different distributors around the time of COVID that were operating this service where they could organize for people fake vaccine certificates and help them do things to get like border passes for transporting between Queensland and New South Wales. So some interesting things with this market. They would do things like create fake vaccine digital certificates, but this community, they were also really receptive to broader public health shifts that were taking place around the world. So as soon as it was potentially mandated from employers that you needed a vaccine certificate to return to work, they would adjust things for those specific causes. People would post into this social media space with oh, this is great, but I'm based in Italy. Can you help me with this? And they'd say, yep, sure, no problem. Now we'll do this one for Italy. So it wasn't just always an Australian context. The other interesting thing with this market is that it didn't really function like a market where people were expecting money for some of this. A lot of this was donation based, and it was really clear through some of these forum comments how much people bonded over these ideologies. And you can see some of the that the globalists and cabals are losing big time, that their decades of plans and investment of who knows what are being destroyed, and that this is the community like fighting back against big tech and the government and whoever else. And the really interesting thing about this community was that they did things like crowdsourcing some of these tools. So they would go through these collaborative community processes to try and guide each other and make these fake vaccine certificates look as genuine as they possibly could. And there's some quotes here. on the right that you'll see too. So this is one person posting saying, just an FYI on the printable certificates, the coat of arms is way too high. I DM'd you a video that shows how slow the movement is. And then one was from one of the distributors making specific requests that he needed photos or videos of the checking in process for South Australia. So a really interesting market that shows how these markets and communities can pop up in situations where we might not expect them to. So I'll wrap up pretty quickly, but I just thought I'd leave with a few sort of final considerations. I think it's always really tricky in the space of technology and offending, where most of what I'm talking about is already outdated now. So Telegram, one of the messaging apps that I mentioned, there's been some shifts over in the EU that has meant that actually most people now are moving away from Telegram and moving into another app. So the space of cybercrime is always filled with so much flux that you really can't reliably predict what the next sort of innovation can be. But we can look at a few different things. In terms of cryptocurrency, I mean, Bitcoin recently, as much as we might want to laugh about fake digital currencies, Bitcoin's reached an all-time high just this week. We've certainly seen the shifts with things like artificial intelligence. I won't have time here, but if you're interested and want to be sufficiently frightened, pop into your browser, thispersondoesnotexist.com, and basically every time you refresh, it'll show you a picture of somebody that doesn't exist. It's all artificially generated for it. So really, I mean, it doesn't take too much to think about what some of the implications of these technologies might be, right? And then we'll probably all be in a situation where we look like Joe Biden staring at this quantum computer, wondering what the hell is going on. The second point I thought I'd mention here is just to be mindful about how we might actually be creating the conditions for these illicit services and markets to develop. Maybe it was predictable that if we force everyone to adopt a vaccine certificate, that we expect some sort of pushback from people on some of these practices. I think it's a really interesting shift overnight or over the last week with the proposed social media ban, that now information has come out that actually it might be most people that will have to sign up for these digital identity services to verify whether or not we're 16 to be able to access social media platforms. Inevitably, I mean, where we have digital solutions like this, as I'm sure much of the program talks about today, we have to accept some of these risks and trade-offs from these technological advancements. And the last point that I'll finish on is also to just keep in mind that whilst so much of this is technical, it doesn't mean that everybody needs to be an IT expert to understand some of these challenges that we're having now or over the next few years with technologies. What we need to do really is keep in mind what we call the human factors of cybercrime. And I think there's a really interesting section in a book that I'd pull out here just to highlight this fact that cybercrimes, we typically think of them as these technical offences, but in many cases, as it says, these crimes are motivated by individuals or network of people, motivated by many of the same drives as we see for other types of crimes. And research supports this. I mean, many of the emerging literature around what we know about juvenile hackers suggests that actually it's the same people that have already come to attention to the criminal justice system in some place. Same thing with victimization personality traits or demographics. We're seeing much of this map on pretty clearly, whether it's a quote cybercrime or a more traditional crime. And then the last sentence for this, I'll end on that: the human decision-making at play influences the course of an offence, the justice response, and policymakers' attempts to legislate against these crimes. So that's my sort of final push, that I hope technology doesn't scare people, and that you think you remind yourself that if you embed all of this within a focus on the humans in some of these situations, then that's going to be helpful regardless of wherever we go with crypto and artificial intelligence. So that's all from me. Looking forward to some of the other presenters from this morning. Thank you.
Yeah, so and what I'll do is just before morning tea, I'll get Andrew and Grant to come up and answer questions from their presentation together. Perfect. So it's very interesting. So it's almost like I went through a journey in that presentation of kind of going, oh, right, I better change that. I'm going to take that down. I'm not going to have that in the house. I'm going to take that off my phone, to really it's a case of a new expression of old offences. So we're just seeing maybe different access, improved access. And as someone who has an interest in the treatment of people in forensic mental health through technology, where I want someone to be tech savvy and have tech literacy, then there's the double-edged sword of people having that tech literacy in order to do the offences as well.